Discord in here just to be safe.
I'm not consenting.
Don't make that joke with this group up.
Right.
All right. So share screen. Let's go. There's the checklist. Probably ought to zoom on that a bit since it's tiny as shit.
How tiny is shit?
Yeah, exactly. Where? Oh, there we go.
I'm gonna start with like goals and stuff and all that.
Yeah, exactly. If you give it a minute to let people hop in.
No, thank you, Jeff Maracini. Happy belated birthday, by the way, buddy.
Well, we got people joining.
All right, let's do this.
You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, that's fine. What is happening? PenguaCon, Facebook Land, IT and the D, Podcast Detroit, all that good stuff. This was normally supposed to be our time slot at PenguaCon, the annual conference, to do our So You Want to Start a Podcast panel, but instead we're taking things virtually. So we're on our Zoom platform and we're online, and appreciate hanging out with us.
Well, yeah, and I think if nothing else, I think what we're doing right now goes to the first point I always make during all of these presentations, which is that, for those who don't know, we run IT in the D. We also, which is a networking group and a podcast. We also, that evolved into PodcastDetroit that we own, where we have 8 studios in 3 locations, in Royal Oak, downtown Detroit, and Northville. And the first thing we always tell people is you don't need us to actually do a podcast. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of the format. We've actually converted almost all of our shows that we're recording in our studios, because we closed down a little over a month ago when everything kind of went chaotic. And we've got most of our shows up and running on this platform, Zoom, to keep them up and running and doing your thing during these kind of chaotic times. And that's one way to do things.
So I think that's the number one question is, and I get all the time, like, hey, I want to do a podcast. And the first thing my first question back is always, why? Like, what's your goal? What are you trying to get out of it? Because, we always try to talk about podcasting is kind of like bowling and golfing. Like there's times where do you want to just screw around on the course or on the lanes and kind of goof around with your buddies and get drunk? Or do you want to buy the $1,000 clubs and the clubs and the bags and the stuff and the cleats and the, and get the lessons and make this like a thing, like I'm all in.
Right.
And there's the beautiful thing is there's no wrong answer to any of this. Podcasting is kind of this one platform where if you want to do a Friday night burping hour, you can do a Friday night burping hour show and just burp for an hour. And that's if you have
odds are good somebody out there is going to want to listen to it.
Right. And if you have 2 people that listen and that's all, and that makes you giggle, then cool. But if you want to actually, take your brand and make it a thing and correlate it with, let's say, a book, or let's say you're a public speaker, or let's say whatever it is that you want to put this content out, and it's a reflection of your professional life, you can go there too. Or anywhere in between. That's the beautiful thing about this platform is do it what you wish, and there's no wrong answer.
This just reminded me. Keep talking for a sec. Sorry.
That's fine.
There's actually another doc that we did. And then
I'm gonna go like the common questions, or like the actual, like everyone always like the top 5 questions are always, how long does it need to be? And I'm going to be honest with you.
There we go. That's the one we actually did. That's the one we actually did for PenguinCon.
That's a true story, by the way. Start podcast. I was going to get to that, but I guess yeah. You know what? You know when we talk about like, okay, now I want a podcast. Like, here's the thing: if you can't sit down and talk with me at a bar about what it is that you want a podcast about, like it's not going to be a thing. Like,
well,
just,
and you have to be able to have that conversation over successive nights for a while.
Right. And, you know, what are you going to do a podcast on? Oh, you know, pop culture and gaming and, you know, movies. Yeah, get in line.
Yeah.
If you can't describe your podcast in 3 words, you probably need to refine your concept a little. Like IT and the D is Detroit tech news.
Is
3
it,
words.
Is it? Like, I don't.
I mean, that was the initial. I mean, it's moved on a little bit from there, and that's a lot of what we do. But
and here's the thing: like,
I can sum up IT and the D in 2 words: geeks drinking.
No, I always talk about like 97.1 is a sports AM or a sports FM station, but they talk about burgers in Detroit. Like you don't have to. Like if you pick technology, it's not. You don't sit around at work all day talking technology. We argue about
what's your Mount Rushmore of breakfast cereal?
Yeah. No, we argue about breakfast cereals and Terminator time travel and Star Trek versus Star Wars and all that other crap. So that's kind of what, you know, but you have to figure out as a podcast host, you know, what do you want out of it? Like if you do it like we went back to the time that you wanted, how long you want to do it. And some people will say a half an hour, some people say an hour, some people say 2 hours, some people say whatever. Joe Rogan says like 6 hours a day.
Right.
There's no wrong answer. If you can build an audience doing a 15-minute daily podcast or a 20-minute bi-weekly podcast or a 2-hour monthly, then that's on you. Like you do.
For sure. I mean, that's the one thing we've seen with Podcast Detroit over and over again is, you know, we've got some shows that are 20 minutes long. We have some shows that are an hour long, which is the vast majority of them. We have some shows that are 2 hours long. We have some, you know, there's no right or wrong answers with this nonsense. And that's the beauty of it is you get to do the only answer is what works for you and your audience. That's it. Yeah.
And I think like Netflix has changed the way some podcasters are dropping when they're doing like a 12-part series and they just drop it and then you won't hear from them for 6, 9, 12 months. Again,
right.
No wrong answer, right? Like,
well, and we've seen that shift more and more with shows that, you know, because just the way that, and we talk about RSS feeds and that kind of stuff later, but I mean, you know, like iTunes and those kind of places, a lot of them won't approve you until you have at least 3 to 5 episodes in your feed. And so a lot of shows are waiting until they have those 3 to 5 episodes in their feed to have that initial binge for people ready when they go live, and then they keep releasing weekly.
Well, here's I guess let's take it. Like I just had a conversation a couple of days ago with a friend of ours that wants to do a podcast for something that she's spinning up.
Who still hasn't reached out, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, that's fine. But like I go, I don't know if you know what you're getting into. Like, are we like who's going to host it? How are you going to distribute?
Mm-hmm.
Like where are you going to record? Like, oh, we have a room. Like, and then what? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. People realize like, are you going to have Instagram, Facebook, website? Are you going to have business cards? Like, are you going to make this a thing? You know, do you even know like on the editing part, like, you know, how to make your voices sound like average or normal?
Well,
like,
and that
there's
gets
a lot into this.
Well, yeah, and that gets into, you know, the basics that we're talking about here. I mean, you know, so, you know, we already talked, you know what you're talking about. 1, you know, and then 2, are you going to do it on your own, or are you going to have co-hosts? I am stunned when somebody tries to do a show on their own, because to me that is one of the hardest things in the entire world to do is to just run a podcast on your own with nobody in the room to bounce ideas off of or you know, bounce topics off of, that kind of stuff. And that, but I mean, if there are people that do it, and that's great, but I mean, I couldn't do it. I
mean, here's the thing, like it has to be a trial and error thing. Like with Dave and I, we didn't know what we wanted to do. We knew that we had to get in the same room together, and we had to pre-lubricate with some fine malted beverages, and we had to make it. We had to make it church. We had to make it a thing. We had to make it an event. We had to make it a place to be. Like some people can just go, I'm going to record on Friday, and someone else is going to call in on Zoom, and I'm going to write out my script. If that works for you, go. That's fine. Like figure out and it'll take 8, 10, 12, 15 episodes before you really feel like, oh my God, that was perfect. That's it. That's my voice.
Yeah. Well, and that's, that gets into, some of the basics is, like, how are you going to record this? I mean, the beauty of this format is the barrier to entry is ridiculously low. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you can use your phone to start up a podcast. I mean, there are sound apps and recording apps on your phone. You can take a step up from that, like we did, like when we started, hitting cons and wanting to get drops and that kind of stuff. We grabbed a Tascam handheld recorder and started doing things that way, all the way out to, you can go out and drop, $2, $5, $8, $10,000 on gear to do this stuff if you want to do it. But it's okay. Again, are you going to be a casual golfer, or are you going to try to take on Tiger Woods?
Well, and that's another question that I got almost immediately was, how do you get sponsors? And it's like, you didn't even line up a show yet.
Right.
You have no following yet.
No, my favorite story about that, because I always do a meeting with everybody that reaches out through the PodcastDetroit website. I always do a meeting with, and one of the first, this one lady, our little sit down meeting, she must have brought up monetization about 10 times in the first 15 minutes that we were talking. And so I finally just looked at her and I said, look, I got to be honest with you. It's probably for the best if you don't record with us. And you'd have thought I slapped her across the face. She sat back and looked all appalled and that kind of stuff. And she's like, well, I don't understand. What do you mean? And I'm like, well, here's the deal. You've made it clear that your number one goal with this is to monetize. And I've already told you, because I tell people the same thing every time. Look, your first 6 to 10 episodes are going to be experimental. That's almost inevitable. I don't care how well planned out you think this is. I don't care how well thought out you think it is. And yeah, some people are faster than that and some people are slower than that. But our general rule of thumb is it's going to take you 6 to 10 episodes to figure out what works for you, what works for your audience, how you really want this to flow, and all that kind of stuff. So I've already told you that you're going to be 2 months in before you really know what you're even going to do. And you've already told me that your main goal is monetization. So you're going to be at least 2 months in and not making any money and still figuring things out. And you're going to be mad at us. And I don't need that kind of karma. There are plenty of places around town that will take your money and not care about you. We don't need to be those guys. That's not who we are. That's not what we do.
Well, let's do some math while we're on the monetization conversation, because I think this puts everything in perspective, and I think it normalizes people's expectations.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact numbers from Libsyn, but they always come out with the numbers of the top one. I think the top 1% of all podcasts get, I think it's 500 downloads per show. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's about right.
And basically, if you're an advertiser, you're going to pay anywhere from $15 to $25 per 1,000 views or per 1,000 downloads. Yep. So if you do that math, you can basically sell an ad for $7.50 to $12.50 if you are in the top 1% of all podcasts. So, not to bring you back down to earth, but we need to be real here, and you got to figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Let's flash back to a conversation that we had with one of our favorite people at Motor City Comic Con about 4 years ago, where we were talking with somebody who had a show and was doing his thing and had heard about us and knew what we are and what we were doing. And so we're all sitting around a table outside and having a couple drinks. And, he came down to, okay, so what does this all really mean to me if I join your network and let you guys do ads for me? And we said, okay, well, what are your numbers really like? And he told us, and he had done a lot of chest puffing over the course of the earlier conversation. And when he actually told us his numbers, we were like, all right, well, I mean, you're looking at maybe $30 an episode from an ad revenue standpoint.
And you can hear the sound.
Yeah. And he got really, really angry with us, whereas his co-hosts were like, dude, shut up. Like, they're trying to help us. What's wrong with you? They're being honest with us. So
right. I mean, that's why, the one thing I think the best thing for podcasting right now is for businesses that want to extend on their brand. Because if you look at the cost of barrier to entry versus TV, billboard, magazine,
for sure,
ad, you can put out normal weekly, daily content for pennies on the dollar of what you would, and you can basically curate your own message. You can, so the one thing, I mean, I did it for my work not too long ago, where instead of doing the webinars and sending out mailers and doing all of like the quote unquote marketing stuff, I would bring customers in a room, and we would,
well, instead of that 2-hour sales call every Friday morning,
right, we were doing a half an hour of, this is what we're seeing in the marketplace, this is how we implemented this technology or this solution, and this was the outcome. And there wasn't a sales pitch attached to it. There wasn't. Right. We were just educating customers, partners, if they wanted to or not. So we put the message out, hey, when you're on the treadmill in the morning, driving into work, here's some really cool content for you to kind of, hopefully you can take something out of it and make your day better, right? I think when you break down podcasting as a general, there's, I think, 2 ways of really being beneficial. One is something that makes me giggle my ass off. Like if you want to, the burp on Friday nights, if that makes you laugh, and it costs you $40 every 2 weeks to go do it.
And that, honestly, that was us when we started. I mean, to us, this was bowling night. One of us would cover the bar tab, one of us would cover the studio fees because we recorded someplace else at the time, and one of us would walk across the street and buy a 30-pack of PBR and a handful of Slim Jims, and off we went.
And it was giggle fest. We had no expectations of doing anything remotely serious. And I mean, here we are 6-7 years later. I don't have any expectations of doing things seriously. Like, if I'm not laughing at least cracking jokes or doing something, like, I don't want to do it. Like, it's not fun. But then again, not everyone can walk in and be like, yeah, we're going to be funny. You can't push it. You got to be you. Like, you have to, Dave, you always say it's true. If you're sitting with me at the bar, it should be close to the same conversation as you have when you're doing a podcast. Otherwise, it's not going to sound like you. It's going to be fake. And it's going to be pushed.
Podcast audience can sniff a fake persona a mile away.
Oh yeah. Or if you're reading, or if you're selling something, or if it sucks. Like, I'm not going to say I'm tired because I listen to a few podcasts, but not that many. But like, hello. It's that whole like. It's not for everyone.
NPR voice that if everyone wanted to listen to, they'd be listening to NPR.
but
on the other hand, NPR Up First is a great daily news podcast. I listen to it every morning.
Oh, for sure. But if that's what you're looking for, that's what it is. Yeah.
Just like I'm not going to watch the country music channel on TV, right? But there's like a million people that do, right? Or people that watch whatever. You know what I mean? There's millions of people that do, right? It's all about, and the one thing that I think is utter absolute bullshit is that whole quotient of know your audience.
You will never know your audience.
I don't think it's physically possible. Like
if there's one thing that this has taught us, well, and I guess that's the other thing to keep in mind is how much the landscape has changed. I mean, you listen to the stats that say, 230,000 podcasts launched last year. Dude, there weren't 230,000 podcasts out when we started in 2013.
No, we call those fart in the wind podcasts. They're just
the flip side of that is that the other stat is that 60 to 65% of those 230,000 that just launched will not reach a 10th episode.
Right, because either they didn't sell an ad, or you ran out of, like, that was my biggest fear when we started. This. You make fun of me every day that we weren't going to make it past 16 episodes because we were going to run out of shit to talk about. And we're at episode 335, and I eat crow.
Wait, no, wasn't this 344?
Was it 334 or 344?
344.
So Bob's wrong plus 228. 328, sorry.
Yeah, whatever. you do that math. But it's true though. Like, we built a format though for our show. Like, we were lucky enough to have a networking group that we could pull guests from.
Oh yeah, we
And
did everything backwards. That's what we love
Right.
to tell people.
And there's always, like, that's the hardest part. Like, people go, I can't get guests. Because all you do is send out cold call emails and cold call Twitter DMs, hoping people are going to answer, going, yes, I would love to come on your show with 3 listeners, you know, like,
And help you build your audience. Yeah.
right. You know, that's cool that you want Kevin Smith on your show. Hell, we do too, but he's, you know, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Just let's level set that expectation. We even know his friends that were on his TV show, and we can't get him to come on the show.
I built him a website when he opened a store, and he's still not coming on. I'm just saying.
Right.
So I guess just to double back in, I mean, the last thing in the the recording at home, the whole software thing. So yeah, I mean, dude, you can go out, and it's the same thing with equipment. Like, you can go out, you can drop hundreds or thousands of dollars on software. For what it's worth, we always tell people, grab Audacity and start there. It's free, it's open source. We still use it we don't use it for recording, but we still use it for editing. And it does a nice, solid job for what it is, and at least gets you the basics of letting, again, there's no need to go overboard right off the top. Figure out if it works for you, buy that basic set of clubs, and then figure out if you want to upgrade your driver or upgrade your putter, that kind of stuff.
Well, and then Jeff brought it up in the text chat too, that there's nothing worse than if you're in the I'm Sitting on the Toilet podcast and you know who they are, and if you listen to it and the first thing, all it sounds like echoey, hollowy, I'm sitting on the toilet and recording the show.
Right.
You're going to last about 2 minutes if you're lucky. I don't care how good the content is, and you are out.
No, you tune out almost immediately.
Done. Because it's too much of a distraction, and you can't do anything about it.
Well, and I will. I'm gonna skip over the studio stuff for a sec and just go to the importance of cadence. We've already talked about level setting your expectations. Honestly, the one thing that I've found with all of our shows more than anything else, the most important part is cadence, and not even necessarily recording cadence, but release cadence. If you tell people you're going to do a weekly show, then damn it, have a weekly show out. If it's going to be bi-weekly, then have a bi-weekly show out. Because it doesn't take much. We were actually just talking about this about one of our shows. There are podcasting services out there that drop you if you miss 3 or 4 weeks, and don't have new content out there. They just start dropping stuff.
Our favorite, we did our second show just to make ourselves laugh, called Worst Meatball Sandwich Ever. And we did 40, 50 episodes, and it was hysterical.
So clearly we have to do another one just to get that back up and running. Yeah,
I know. I mean, but we would read reviews of 1-star Yelp reviews and make ourselves laugh. And literally you can't find it anywhere, I think, but SoundCloud. Like there's 70, 80 places to find podcasts. We were on all of them, and they all dropped us because we stopped recording for, we haven't recorded in about 1.5 years on that show, but regardless, they dropped us. We're done.
We need to work on that.
Yeah.
So, and then honestly, so from us, I mean, again, and not, this isn't a sales pitch for us. I mean, we do have studios you can come use, but from a pro and con perspective, realistically, from a studio should offer you a few things. Number one, better equipment, because our biggest area of growth over the last 3 years has been either people recording at home, or people recording someplace else, and then one of a few things happen. Either they're ready for it to start sounding better because we have better gear than they do, and the soundproofed rooms and all that stuff, or they're ready to start having guests and they don't want them in their living room, or they're just ready for it to be easier. Because like from our perspective, like we're a completely hands-off thing for people. Like you come into our studios, you sit down, you do your show, you walk away. We handle the editing, the syndication, the distribution, all that fun stuff for people. So I mean, if you're going to go to a studio, make sure they're offering value add for you.
Otherwise, why do it? I mean,
right.
Because that's the biggest issue. Is most of the people that come to us too are like, you start talking about the tech stuff, and they're like, oh boy, I'm out. Like I don't want any of this. I don't want to do any of that tech stuff. I just want to burp in a microphone for an hour and make it be amazing.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that for you.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
And that's the thing. I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, okay, well, how do I, when we leave here, how do I get our stuff up on iTunes? How do I get you don't have to. We do that for you. That's just part and parcel of what we do. So just, know what you're getting into.
So I guess let's talk about the brand and all that too, and how far you're going to go, because I'm going to give a couple examples of people that went.
Well, and that gets into some of the, this next topic anyway. So yeah.
I'll give it to like here's the thing, no matter if you're talking like a couple of instances of people talking comic books, like basically did pop culture, then another one that did like professional wrestling.
Right.
And every single show, conference, get together, event, they were there with a table and a microphone, or they were there with a remote gear, and they were doing interviews, and they were bringing in high profile people, and they were an active part of that community that they were podcasting about, right? They went all in.
By the way, I'm sorry. I just have to say thanks, Eddie, for pointing out that so you want to start a podcast. He just sang that to the tune of "Do you want to build a snowman?" And now that's trapped in his head. Thanks.
Do you want to start a podcast? But in all honesty, like they were at every con. They had branded T-shirts. They had the business cards. They were moderating panels. They were sitting on the, they were getting tables at cons. They were all in. This was their brand, as they were going to make it work. Again, how far do you want to take this thing? If that is, we had one that did all of that.
I'm being told the worst part of this. I'm sorry, I just got a comment on this that the worst part of this whole thing is forcing people to stare at the checklist while we're actually talking and going back.
Yeah. Put it back on the first thing then. The question, the underpants gnomes.
Here, I will. There's us, and I'll just keep it in the background, and I'll keep us flowing. Go.
Done. But like you realize that I did all the right things. I checked all the boxes. I went to every con, and then all of a sudden, my show isn't taking off. I'm not getting any listeners. I don't know why, and found out that his true passion was what he did 9 to 5. And we
Jimmy,
yeah, we call it pod fading. But he literally ran out of crap to talk about. Shifted to his.
Well, dude, let's put that in perspective. Like, he was a guy who literally drove himself across the country to go to cons and moderate panels for that particular niche and that particular topic, and had, every guest on the planet that was associated with that, like every name associated with that stuff on his show, and still just couldn't get it to go because that was a niche.
Well, I guess it depends on it's easy for us to talk about our profession because we live and breathe it 10, 12 hours a day. That's our life. And plus we're hobbyists as well on the technology front. Let's say you carve that, and what's like my fourth hobby? You know what I mean? Like, I can talk about beer for days on end. I'm just saying, I'm trying to go down the list of what my, let's say I want to do a podcast on old Cadillacs, right? I can only talk about that stuff for so long before I run out of shit to talk about.
God damn it. The guy that bitched about the checklist said, hold on, I thought you guys were better looking. Go back to the checklist.
He's just going to interrupt, just read and interrupt it every time now.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to pay attention to the comments.
Yeah. It's Chris anyway. He's a jerk face.
Exactly.
But if I tend to talk about my fourth or fifth hobby down the line, I could go to a couple of auto shows and interview a couple people, but I would run out of crap to talk about because it's not my life. And I think the people that are the most successful doing this and have been the ones that are either talking about their profession or something that's so active in their life, like the reasons why I'm single gals, talking about bad dates. They have a plethora of bad date stories, and they have an amazing podcast, kind of trashing on their time.
Well, and they have a phenomenal chemistry together. I mean, that's honestly, I think one of the best comments that you and I have ever gotten about the show is that listening to us is like sitting on a bar stool between the two of us and listening to us talk. And I will take that all day, every day.
Absolutely. And again, if I'm not laughing or if I'm not cracking if I'm not waiting for my opportune moment to crack a one-liner, I don't want to podcast.
Right.
That's why I'm going to do that anyway. I might as well record it and do it. And that's the weirdest thing. Everyone talks about how long did it take you to not hate your voice?
A few episodes. Honestly, it did. I mean, it took me, and this is again one of those things that we tell everybody that's starting up a show, is that the biggest thing, the one thing that I can rely on every single time is that somebody who has never done this before, that their first recording session, with that first time that first episode goes out, I'm going to get a phone call or an email that says, "What the hell did you do to my voice?" And the answer is nothing. That's how you sound. You just don't hear yourself that way in your own head But when other people hear you, that's how they hear you, and that's a huge thing. It's reality.
Nobody, like, it's almost like, I'm trying to think of a bad analogy. Yours, I was going to say it's like farts. Yours is always better, but it's not. It's the opposite.
That's
Yours,
terrible, Bob.
I know it's the worst. No, it's, because usually it's like yours is good, but everybody else thinks it's bad. But no, like everyone else thinks your voice is fine.
You can't call my baby ugly. My baby, yeah.
No, it's opposite fart. Like yours is like everyone else thinks yours sounds fine, but you think it's awful.
Right.
But it took me about 4 episodes because the first one I tried to push my voice. I'm not gonna lie. Like
that was the second one.
You try because you don't know if you're talking normal or if you're like trying to be like radio guy, and that's what I tried to do, and it sounded awful, and it was embarrassed. I don't even want it to exist because, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing that stupid voice. And you find yourself in that mode where you're not talking like you normally would, like, again, at the bar.
Again, just chiming in with a comment, Lithy, who's one of the PenguinCon folks, chimed in and said, Bob's looking all stately and podcast mafia father-like. Randy's looking all serious podcaster businessman. And Dave's looking all podcast frat boy. That's phenomenal.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, stately, yeah, because I got the chair and the fireplace and the...
Yeah, you're doing the FDR fireside chat is what you're doing.
Right.
But no, so, and then, I guess on the whole branding front, I mean, one of the things we always stress to people is, get yourself a landing page, make sure that you've got a place to drive your own traffic to. You're going to want to have a website. You're going to want to have your Facebook page. You're going to want to have, your Instagram, the Twitters and all that kind of stuff all set up and ready to go. So that when you launch, you're launching properly because, we have some people that they don't know what they're doing. And like, it's important. You don't want to necessarily, like, we appreciate it. We have some folks that have gone out and registered websites and just point people at their show page on our site, but that doesn't do you any good.
No, and that's the best thing we could have ever done was creating a blog post or just having, all we have is a simple WordPress site. It's nothing fancy. We grabbed a template and every site.
It's super fancy, Bob. You don't know.
Dave worked real hard on it. I'm a web guy. But like for every episode 1, here's like a couple things we talked about. Here's a couple links. Here's an embeddable player. So we can, when you talk to people going, where do you find your podcast? Don't tell them pocketcasts.com and figure, because maybe they're Apple or whatever.
Here's my website.
Yeah, itandthed.com. Go to the podcast page and there's they're all there. And not only that, it's good for search engine, because that's the one thing, discoverability. How do you find my show?
Well, and especially now that Google has, really started taking the whole podcast thing seriously. One of the things that I've started doing, as much of a joke as they are sometimes, is the transcriptions, and just making sure we've got transcripts for all of our shows out there to help on SEO and discoverability and everything else.
What was the one I sent you? I thought it was hilarious.
Our friend Chelsea from Embrew is no longer there, and the automated transcription, Chelsea's embryo is no longer there.
Yes.
Wow. Which completely changes the meaning of that sentence, yes.
I just cut and pasted. I'm like, Chelsea's embryo is no longer there. He's like, what the hell are you texting me?
Yeah, because you texted me that rambling, and I'm like, what? And you're like, the transcript, idiot. I'm like, oops, it is what it is. But no, so I mean, like, it's a super important thing to make sure that you've got a landing page that you're driving traffic to, and that you're actually like, because you want to own and control your traffic. And so we always, like, again, have a home base where, and a website is usually best, because from there, if you want to send them off to your Facebook page, or you want to send them off to subscribe, or you want to send them off to join you on Twitter, cool, but have a main focal point that you drive everybody back to and control all of your own information.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's somebody watching right now that should be having her own podcast, Jenny Mead. She's on Facebook every day. I think she's bored off her ass with this whole quarantine thing, and she needs her own podcast.
Okay.
I'm just.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first one of those that we've started.
Yeah, I know. That's a funny thing. Like, there's some people that, like, your Facebook is hilarious.
Well, no,
that's podcast, and then it actually works.
That's how Reasons Why I'm Single started. I mean, I love telling people that story, that Chelsea was the karaoke host at your local neighborhood dive bar, and that's how we both got to be friends with her. and she would keep posting these Facebook statuses about, her horrible first dates and these messages that guys would send her on, all the different dating apps, and hashtag it reasons why I'm single. Like, oh my God, you've got to do a show. This is hilarious. And it's work. They just hit episode 200.
But that's the thing that makes it, I think that it's the cadence and it's the bounce off with her and Stacy that make it great. Like if she would have just met some other single girl and decided to do a podcast, there was no relationship between the two.
Not at all.
It wouldn't have worked. The fact that those two are bouncing off each other, that's kind of the thing. That's why,
dude, it's no different than us. Dude, they've literally been friends since kindergarten. We've been friends for 20 odd years. Yeah. You can't fake that.
Right. And it's one thing if we were talking about like really serious business things, and David, today we're going to talk about
optimizing SQL Server queries on on the information technology in the Detroit show.
Yeah, we're talking about the cloud. You know what I mean? Like, here's the thing. If you want to do a technical show, that's fine. You don't need to be yuck funny. But like, here's the thing. If I had to do a technical show, I'd rather jump off a bridge. Like, it's not, it wouldn't be, like, what am I going to do? Read code for 2 hours? No, who wants to listen to that anyway?
Oh, and here's a missing semicolon that will cause this to error out.
But there's some people that want, like, what did you learn on the show? Like, no, like our show, thankfully the one thing we always got as feedback was, you're not educational, but God damn, are you entertaining?
That is the second best piece of feedback we have ever gotten from people I love.
And that changed how we viewed how to do our show, because in the beginning we were like, okay, we're going to do tech news. Like Randy was like, oh, you guys do Detroit tech news. We're like, no, are you kidding? Like, but initially, yeah, that's what we decided to do. And then quickly became, no, we're going to talk about what we would talk about if we were just having a drink in our hand.
Yeah, we're going to talk Star Wars. We're going to talk, security breaches. We're going to talk, oh my God, you see the story about so-and-so. And that is, I mean, that's kind of what we've built ourselves up to be.
Well, and that's the one thing too. Like we've seen the funniest ones that are in my mind are like the Die Hard, where they took a show. And
Die Hard, yeah.
Die Hard, yeah, and they went 10 minutes into the movie Die Hard, dissertated it, and then but you can only do that show like for what 10, 12 episodes before you ran out of the damn movie.
Well, they moved on to the next movie. I mean,
right. But like, so I think the key to that is finding a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche is the best, because there's way too many general podcasts out there. You're not gonna.
And that, I guess that's the thing to keep in mind though is, understand, are you going to have something that's long-term viable, or something that's going to be like a short-term flash in the pan? Like, I haven't looked, but I guarantee you, if I go search like iTunes or wherever else, I assure you there are a cajillion podcasts about friggin' Tiger King right now.
Oh my God, yeah.
And what are all those people going to do now? Like, great, okay, you did that. Now what? Like,
Carol Baskin did it.
Well, yeah. Like, nobody cares anymore. Like that. Okay, that wave came and went. Now what?
Didn't I forget? Did someone like when they hopped on something like right? I think it was one of the Marvel series, and they got like the first podcast name for it.
That was Jimmy. He tried to do Legion.
Yes, that was it.
Yep, and he did a great job with it, and then he lost interest in it and stopped doing it.
Right. But then again, like, when you do a TV show like that, not everyone is watching the same shows as you. Like, if you could do Tiger King, great. You're going to run out of shit in 10 episodes. If if you talk about what you're watching, not everyone's watching the same shit. So if you hop on something else, and lost the audience.
And again, that's okay. I mean, because, dude, not everybody's interested in IT news. Not everybody's interested in, the stuff that we talk about. It's okay to have a niche interest, but it's, understand that for what it is, and understand that you are tied to that show for your longevity. Like, dude, one of the shows that I loved on our network was Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And they talked about the show that was on, I think it ran 5 seasons. But then as soon as that show was done, so were they. That's how that went.
And that's what I don't understand. Like, I kind of like, why do people outside of Detroit listen to our show? Like, that boggles my mind. And that's the one thing, like, don't get too wrapped up with when you find out who's listening, because like, I would never sleep if I was trying to figure out why people in Silicon Valley or New York or Dallas or somewhere were listening to our
Oh,
show.
it makes my head hurt. Well, but I mean, we kind of know. I mean, so again, this gets back to us doing it backwards. I mean, so we've run the networking group's been around since 01. The Facebook group has been around since 08. And then when the bottom fell out of the economy, people from here left and moved away and went wherever there were tech jobs to be found, but they still stayed in touch with us. And so by the time we actually launched our show, we had little seeds, of pockets of listeners, all across the country that were in tech hubs waiting for us to do something.
Right, which again makes sense. But to
Well, then
me,
you've got Andre, who just Andre Arbalez, who just chimed in and said, "Hey, I'm sitting here watching you guys from Dallas. What do you want?"
barbecue, Andre. Artie. No, but it totally makes sense when you build friendships and then everyone kind of scatters. But like, how many podcasts are out there that have been doing it every single week for 6-7 years, like we have? Like, you know what I mean? It's a
very, very few.
And that's kind of going back. It's kind of a commitment you need to make. Like it became or it is religion for us.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's and we talked about that. I mean, when and that kind of gets back to how are you going to do stuff. When we decided we were going to leave the place that we were recording at initially, we had those conversations where, hey, do we just go buy gear and put it in, your basement or my basement or wherever else? And we knew, us being us, we would find excuses and reasons to not record if that were the case. But if we kept that, hey, it's the studio, it is a commitment that, Monday nights, 9 p.m., that light goes on and that's what we do. That's what we do.
It's amazing to me how euphoric the show is to me, because like I've walked into that studio feeling like dog shit maybe
a bunch of times,
50-60 times out of the 344 that we've done. And at the end of the day, the light turns green, shot of schnapps, and you turn the hat backwards over the top, and it's go time. See, I had to get one in.
Again, your obsession with that movie lately is just breaking my ass. But no, I mean,
machine.
But no, I mean that is. I mean, it is. I mean, and I've been there before, where whether I'm I'm sick or I'm stressed out, or to me, it's like the whole podcast, like that Monday night 9 p.m. has become to me what playing goalie in pickup leagues like was for me, where I don't care what else is going on. I don't care, like when you're standing in goal, you can't worry about jobs pissing you off, families pissing you off, this is going on outside of here. Nope, someone's going to be whipping a puck at your head at 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. You better focus. And so, that light comes on and it's okay. It's game time.
So, I mean, I guess that's the thing. Let's say, okay, I'm going to do a show. And how do you know, when it's time to actually, I want to do a podcast versus I shouldn't versus I'm done. You know what I mean? I think I don't think sometimes people that should be doing shows aren't, and then there's people that are doing shows that shouldn't, and they don't know when to quit.
Well, no. So the analogy we haven't touched on is, I think the best analogy and I think it was you that came up with this actually, for what we've built is we basically built a bowling alley. You've got your Monday night leagues that come in and everybody takes things seriously, and they got bags with 6 balls and they got arm braces and side bets and pots and all that other kind of stuff. And then you got like the Friday night crew that comes in and wants to just get drunk and whip balls down the lane. Neither one is wrong. It is what it is, but guess who gets paid more attention to? And
because I know how much you love whipping balls. I'm just saying.
Thanks for playing. Wait.
Hey.
But no, so I mean, it's and that's the hard thing. Like when should you start one? It's when you think you have a value add, and it's when you think you have something that you can commit to and do. And I mean, and that's one of the reasons why we started doing. Dude, I still say like free podcast day is one of the smartest things we've ever done. Where the first Saturday of every month, hey, come on in and try out the studios, see if it's something you actually like, and if it is, great. Let's talk. And so the Tales from the Bar Side folks a couple weeks ago had one of my favorite examples, the girls that do the Homance Chronicles. They came in for one of our free podcast days, decided they loved doing podcasts, but just went off and bought stuff and did it on their own. Awesome. Like, that's great. That's totally cool.
That's like the first time, like for me, it was like, I remember like the first time podcasting was kind of like the first time when you did it too, for you DJ your daughter's elementary school dances.
Yeah.
And you let the kids with the mic, and they grab the mic and they hold it up real close. And they're like, "Hi, poopy," and then they run away giggling. It's like it's kind of how I felt too. I kind of still do. It's like the fact that so many people listen to us ramble about Star Wars and IT crap just still boggles my mind.
I mean, every now and then we have a value add. It's a thing. So I want to, again, we keep thinking we're going to have like 20 minutes of content. And here we are at 7:46. So just to be safe, the next topic is that we have on the checklist is editing. How much is too much or how much is too little. And there are two schools of thought about this. And again, neither one is wrong. To me, so like us, and I guess I should clarify, everything we do by default, whether it's as IT in the D or as Podcast Detroit, is kind of a homegrown defense mechanism for us. Like I started finding a piece of software that could level out voices because Bob, sales guy, big, giant, booming voice, and we would have some 22, 23-year-old tech recruiter in the room who had a quiet little squeaky voice, and it would sound terrible. So find something to level all that stuff out. So when it comes to editing, I mean, like me, like I'm okay, and I prefer to have the ums and the ahs and the awkward pauses and the stilts in the conversation and that kind of stuff, because I mean, for a number of reasons. I mean, but the first and foremost, I don't want a more polished version of myself out there that I feel like I have to live up to. I want it to sound like us, and I want it to be natural.
The best advice I ever got, or the one thing that changed me the most in regards to the ums and the ahs, was videotaping yourself speaking. Yeah. And I took a class, it was an executive presentation class, or whatever the hell it was.
Right.
And they said, go talk about yourself. You got 5 minutes. Go. And then you would watch it back, and literally you have a notepad in front of you, and it says count the ums and the ahs, and then count the nervous twitches. Like you're going to do some weird hitch, whether you're jingling your keys or you keep leaning to the left. And I counted 60 ums and ahs in that 5 minutes. And then once you're cognizant of that and you learn how to pause, like I don't need to speak, like rattle off speaking like the guy that did the Energizer commercials back in the day. You learn how to pause and not talk every 5 seconds.
Well, and I think that's one of the ways we've both gotten better.
Really quickly. What?
No, I think that's one of the ways we've both gotten better is like we've both learned that it's okay for a silence to hit. Like it's
just like Shatner, man, like hardcore. It was awful. It's okay to hit.
Don't understand how you pause.
No, but like
wait, that was almost walking. Sorry.
First,
you take the chicken.
Right. You treat it with respect.
With respect.
Where's Eric when you need him?
Sorry, where's Gutierrez? Where are you, buddy?
But listening to yourself and like finding out where that nervous twitch, hitch. Like I had a sales engineer that worked with me that said etc. like every fourth word. When he didn't know what to add on, he would go and etc. and etc. And then after like 2 minutes of listening to him talk, all you heard was and etc. So like if you're gonna dive in and do this, listen to yourself, and if you have that weird nervous word, lose it quickly.
Mine is absolutely.
You don't say it that much.
I don't anymore.
I would make fun of you about it if you did.
I was gonna say you also tend to transition or segue with so.
Right, but but go back and look at like, oh my god, like the old older TV interviews or even our older shows. Like somebody would ask me a question, and the first word out of my mouth would always be, "Oh, absolutely," and then we would dive into whatever it was.
It's a great question. Great question.
Yeah, good question. Then the other flip side is our Jordan that does Art of Charm. I mean, those guys spend 8 hours a day editing a 30-minute episode, and if you have that kind of time and patience, more power to you.
Well, it becomes a thing. Like it's all like this when you become like Jordan. I mean, I think it's just his name now. Show the Art of Charm's gone, but it's like Steven Crowder and Joe Rogan and those types.
Right.
Like they have crew of like 10, 8, 6, 7 people like helping with the show. Those things become machines. It's a different animal.
For sure.
most of these things are just, two people doing the show.
So, and then show notes, we already talked about, at a minimum, like just bare bones show notes. If you can do transcription, more power to you. It definitely helps with SEO and that kind of stuff. When it comes to places to post and syndication points, there's the biggies. There's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Spotify are the big four. Most of the other podcatchers and that kind of stuff feed off of those directories, but those are the four that at a bare minimum you want to make sure you're at. At least that's my opinion. Any dissenting opinions?
No, I think once you get talking about RSS feeds and stuff, you lose the normal common, like everyone's like, all right.
I wasn't even getting it. Yeah, I wasn't going to get into the tech side of things at all here.
Yeah. Well, that's why we always joke, listen to us anywhere fine podcasts are sold.
Everywhere fine podcasts are sold, yes.
Everyone's got their own way to listen, and like I said, there's no. That's the weird thing about this is when you try to talk about it and understand there's no wrong answer to it anywhere. It's just one of those things where throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. I think that's the best piece of advice I could ever give in podcasting.
That's podcasting 101.
Yeah. We should write that on our business cards. Podcast Detroit. Throw some shit against the wall.
Throw some shit at the wall and see what happens.
But it's true, though. Anyway.
No, and so honestly, that about wraps it up for our 101 discussion. That's everything that we had on the initial checklist that we go through.
We miss you, PenguinCon. We wish we were walking over to the hotel bar right now and then we would be an hour away from the 80s party. Maybe
no.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and for what it's worth, for any of you that are watching, and there are a few of you, we kind of opted against doing our own 80s party tonight. We had folks all lined up and all that kind of stuff, but we decided Smalls, one of our favorite bars down in Hamtramck, is doing one of their Thirst Wave 80s Are Not Dead nights tonight. And so that event is posted on all of the Podcast Detroit pages as well as the IT and the D page, and we are diving in with them to kind of be just like drive the traffic where it needs to be. Like I said, Smalls is one of our favorite places. They're a small local establishment. They are actually still open for like takeout food and that kind of stuff during this as they're open. So we hope you join us there and show your support for them.
I'm just still going to be homesick without a 24-ounce of Pabst and a shot of blackberry brandy. But
it's not the same without me standing behind the bar in the hotel room, looking across at your dopey ass, behind the DJ booth, and you screaming at me to bring you shots, and I can't hear you over the bass. It's not the same.
I know. Those are the days. Well,
and Randy at the door going, ID please. ID.
Right.
ID please.
I'm like, why is it 9,000 degrees in our hotel room? But hey, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Thanks for the great. We got some great Chris Johnson and Jeff. Thanks for the.
Appreciate all the comments, guys. We do. It does. I hate the fact that PenguinCon is not a thing this year, and we'll definitely be back next year with a vengeance.
Yeah, thanks for listening, Marty, too. I appreciate it. And then, we got a full day of PenguinCon stuff tomorrow, too, so hopefully we'll bump into one or two.
And appears we have at least one special guest lined up to join us for tomorrow's stuff, so that should be cool.
That may or may not have been on TV in the past.
Yeah.
Good times. So anyway, on behalf of Bob, Dave, and Randy, thanks for hanging out with us. Enjoy the 80s party if you make it over to Smalls. Otherwise, enjoy being safe at your houses and with your families and all that good stuff, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Cheers.